In this video, I want to show you how you can create these pools or these pools to elevate your furniture using minimal tools and scrap wood. Let's get to it.
Hello, amazing human. My name is Illumine, and welcome back to Just Keep Sending. I am so glad you're here. I want to share with you something different this time. So I will be taking you on a step-by-step on how I created these drawer pulls using scrap wood or trim that I removed from previous pieces. This is one of my favorite things to do to spice up a piece or to bring a personal and unique touch. I hope you stick around till the end so I can show you some of my previous pieces where I added these pulls. The footage I have today is from a set of nightstands I did a few weeks ago, and I will be sharing with you on my next video. So turn on that notification bell so you know when I post and you don't miss it. That will be soon, I promise. I saw these pulls from Brad in Fix This, Build That, but he uses a router table and a crosscut sledge that I don't have, so I adapted this process to use what I have. The first thing is going to be choosing the scrap wood I want for the project. I keep all the skirts that I remove from dressers, and sometimes I take advantage of the curves. So most of the times I use that. That is usually good quality wood. But to test, you can try anything like pine or any other scrap you have, even MDF, but that's gonna be a little messy. To start, adjust the blade height to slightly go over the thickness of the wood. I do this every time I use the table saw. It prolongs the life of the blade and avoids burning the wood. And then, that's when I incline it the 15 degrees to the outside, which is the only direction it goes. At least mine, I don't know others. So once I have chosen the wood, I make sure I have at least 1/2 inch extra in length from each side if the plan is using one continuous strip. As a tip for you, wouldn't rip more than 24 inches in one pass. It might be too long to handle and the piece of wood might fall after passing and the blade could make a dent on the strip. That will be very annoying to sand. For the thickness of the pull, I usually use between 1 inch and 3/4. Smaller might be too small and bigger might be too bulky. Luckily, that is usually how thick the trims are as well. Before we continue, there will be no eco-friendly tip this time. I consider repurposing scrap wood already falls onto that category. There are two ways of doing this. One is cutting the strips 1 inch wide before starting. So just a square, 90 degrees. But as I don't like to waste too much wood, I will show you how I do it to have less unusable leftovers. So after I inclined the blade on the table saw 15 degrees, as I said before, I did the first pass, making sure that the end of that board was being ripped all the way. After that first pass, I measured the top of the pool, or what was going to be the top of the pool. I measured 1 inch. So the funny part in here is that I also did a jig a long time ago. That is a piece of wood that has a 15 degrees cut, so the pool can rest. I mean, the piece of wood can rest. But the funny thing is that this one I did a long time ago, I don't really know what was the purpose of it because I couldn't figure out how to use it until this very moment that I am looking at this footage and I'm realizing what was I thinking when I created this jig. Oh well, too late, because I made another one. As long as there is a 90-degree angle and enough wood to grab and feel my fingers are safe, I still don't need the jig, so I'll show you that in a second. I will be able to make 3 pulls out of each board by taking advantage of flipping the board on each pass. This is what I meant with no waste. My hardware jig 2.0 is just a perfectly square piece of wood. Of course, I grab it from my scrap pile. That I cut a 15-degree bevel. It is just to help extra support when I'm using the table saw. So the purpose of the jig is to give a rest surface when you already have that 15-degree angle, because otherwise it's not really steady and it might be dangerous. So that is the main purpose of having a jig, where you can actually help yourself and keep your fingers far from the blade. Doing a 15-degree angle on a 1-inch pick gives approximately a 1/4 inch material removal, giving a base of 1/2 inch. I continue this until I have enough pieces. In my case, was 6. Okay, now let's cut to size. For that, I use the miter saw. Same idea. Incline 15 degrees first, so the miter saw moves both ways. I made a mistake here, and I noticed after I did the first cut in that the miter saw might splint the tip of the wood, unless it's MDF, which could be a good test piece. Or starting to cut the rest, I taped to make sure the cut was going clean, and as I was cutting through the grain also, that helps. So I trimmed all the edges first, one edge only, and then once I had the first cut made, all I needed to do is put a stop block and all will be cut the same length. Just measure once, put a stop block, and do them all. Another tip here is that regardless that it is very tempting to use as a base the 1-inch part of this spool that is going to be in contact with the miter saw to give stability, it might be dangerous due to the position of the miter saw. If you made it this far, thank you so much. I hope you consider subscribing if you haven't already. Comment and like if you're also enjoying this video. I didn't mention this before, but if you're wondering how I determine the length of the pulls, sometimes I do it just visually, like eyeballing. But in this case, I used the rule of thirds. The drawer was 24 inches long, divided 3. The rule of thirds usually looks very cohesive. So after all that, I just ended it smooth. And in this case, I needed to match the drawer pulls with the legs that were different wood species. Now to the holes. Honestly, there is no need to do them the way I do them, but I feel like giving it a little bit more thought makes it look more professional. I love making these spools when I remove the hardware and they have a weird distance center to center, but in this case, these nightstands needed new holes, so I decided to make them 4 inches apart. So I grabbed one of those coupon cards that come in the mail that have perfect straight edges, and they are easier to cut than cardboard, but harder than regular paper. And I used it to make a template. The back was 7.5 inches long. I found the center by folding the paper and marked 2 inches away from it to each direction. I also found the center on the small side and punched a small hole. To mark it on the pull, I aligned with the back and punched again. I drilled the holes a 1/4 inch deep. I think that was enough, making sure they were going as perpendicular as possible, unless if you have a drill press, lucky you. I don't, so I had to just use regular drill. And that was it. I just made the holes in the drawers and attached them. Here's some others that I have done in the past. For this one, for example, I used the curve of a trim I removed, and I ended up painting them black to match the rest of the piece. But all the process is the same. I had an Art Deco pool that I needed to cover, so I adapted the holes for it. In this dresser, I did is one continuous piece, but the center where the drawers meet, the cut is straight, is 90 degrees. And on the other, we'll say, that's where I cut the 15 degrees angles. So it's one continuous piece and it looks good. This blue one is the very first one I did. And this one, I literally just eyeballed it. And it turned out well. I think they are 5 inches each, but I can't remember how long the drawers were.
So what do you think? Is this something that you would like to try now that you know how to make them? Let me know in the comments. I would love to read you. It might seem overwhelming at the very beginning, but then as you get going, it gets easier. I promise. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.